My name's Ananya Chadha. I think the biggest problem facing Canadians is we have a lot of technology, emerging technologies that are developing really rapidly, and our society is not prepared for it at all.
Ananya Chadha has a very impressive resume, and she's just 17 years old. Here she is figuring out a way to control a remote-controlled car with her brain, building her own talking robot.
I hope this day gets better.
Basically, she's into all things technology, and I mean advanced technology.
That's connecting your brain to machines or to computers to try and do different things.
She also has her pilot's license. Chadha works for IBM on their artificial intelligence team. Did I mention that she's just 17? But she says Canada is not ready for all of the technology currently being developed. Here's her big fix. Ananya Chadha, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I really appreciate it. So, emerging technology, why do you think this is the biggest problem facing Canadians right now?
Yeah, there are a whole bunch of different industries like gene editing, quantum computing, machine learning, brain-computer interfaces that are developing really rapidly. And their implications will totally redefine what it means to be human and the way we live in our societies. And I don't think that we as a country or our different societies and cities are ready for it at all.
So what makes you think, I'm going to get you to explain what you mean by all those terms you just threw out, because I don't exactly know. But first, why do you have the impression that Canada isn't ready?
This past year, we saw the first gene-edited human embryo. So researchers were able to edit out mutations in someone's DNA before they were born to hopefully cure a disease. But what that means for our future is that gene editing is a very real possibility. And I'm sure you guys are aware of the rise of autonomous vehicles and self-driving trucks. And those will wipe out swaths of people who have jobs driving trucks. And technology just moves so fast, and I think that if we don't start thinking about it and preparing for it now, by the time it becomes widespread, it might just be too late.
I feel like so many of us, when we hear what you've just described, so sort of this idea of autonomous vehicles or editing, gene editing an embryo, or the idea that, our brains will think something and they'll be on a computer screen at some point. It's kind of scary for us. How do you view it? Is it scary, or are there opportunities? And if there are opportunities, what are they?
Yeah, so I'm just going to share with you my experience with brain-computer interfaces, which I spend a lot of my time involved in the industry with. So there are companies like Neuralink, Facebook, and Kernel with hundreds of millions of dollars that are focused on developing the next generation of neural interfaces, meaning connecting our brains to machines or computers. And they've made substantial progress. Researchers at UC Berkeley managed to detect imagined speech. So if I'm imagining the word pineapple, they know the word I'm thinking of. And Ray Kurzweil, who used to be the head of engineering at Google, he thinks that by the 2030s, we might just all have brain chips to make us smarter, able to communicate faster. So instead of me talking, you could just already know, and then hopefully understand ourselves better. And so when I first heard about it, I was super scared. I didn't want the technology. Probably like most Canadians, I was super fearful. But I realized that economically incentivized industries tend to not stop. They just tend to keep developing. And so the only way to, I think, create the best possible future is to become one of the leaders in the space to try and use the technology for good.
So if I understand you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think what you're trying to say is that it's coming. So either we just remain afraid of it, or we figure out a way to live with it and even excel.
Exactly. I was scared of it, but upon reflection, I realized that I can't stop it, and I don't think we can stop a lot of these technologies, because ultimately, if something adds value, you take it. If I give you a $100 bill, you'll take the $100 bill because it gave you value. And so if companies can save money by employing the next generation of computers, whether they're like quantum computers that are 100 or thousands of times more efficient, or the next generation of gene editing to create humans without disease, like if it adds value, people will use it. So it becomes a question of how do we prepare?
So when we are talking about how do we prepare, and from your perspective, we aren't prepared, what is the series is called The Big Fix. What is the fix for Canada in order to be better prepared for this sort of onslaught of emerging technology?
Yeah, I think it's a really complex problem, and complex problems don't often have
Easy.
Yeah, but I think that there are some concrete steps we can definitely take to move ourselves in the right direction. I think first is education and awareness, because I'm going to tell you that Google just achieved quantum supremacy, which means they have created a quantum computer that performs better at certain tasks than regular computers. And that's a pretty crazy stat, and it likely shows that the field of quantum computing shows a lot of promise in our future. But most people wouldn't be aware of that. Like, it's crazy, but most people just didn't know. And so it becomes like, how do we make people more aware of our future? And I think that education is a huge part. So for youth, I think like school systems, curriculums should definitely be updated. For example, if you're learning about blockchain or quantum or machine learning, that could be integrated in a typical computer science course, or gene editing could be potentially integrated into a biology course. But you're definitely going to need to change what people are being taught, because I don't think if you're being taught the same thing for hundreds of years, it'll serve you well in a changing world. And then also, you have to educate adults, which is very important, because if adults aren't aware, first, they're not going to be accepting and happy for changes in the education system. And then also, there's like a huge part of the population that should at least be aware. And so that's hard because they don't attend formal education. But I think that there are lots of different avenues that you can take. First, if the government wanted to really share, I was just thinking they could even do like 30-second news flashes or bulletins about like a new piece of technology you should learn about, and just making it interesting. And if you're interested, you can go learn more. And I think that there's a whole bunch of new resources and new mediums we'll learn from, like online courses and online lectures, to make that a possibility.
So do you see it as partially the role of government to promote that kind of education that you're referring to?
I think that perhaps it's not the role of government. Perhaps it's the role of private institutions to then step in as additional education for children. Actually, I do think it's the role of the government, because if the government's job is to try and create best outcomes for society and train its citizens to be the most educated and the most informed and create citizens that are capable of adding value in our global future, I think that the way that we're going to do that is changing what people learn and how people learn. And it most definitely needs to be a part of what people consume. Technology isn't even like a separate industry anymore. I think that advancements in technologies have been affecting literally every industry that exists. Like agriculture has been totally changed by machine learning predicting when to best plant crops. And like the industries you would think are furthest away from technology are still being influenced by a lot of the new tools we're developing.
Excellent point. Thank you for your time and your insights this evening, Ananya. Great to meet you.
Yeah, so good to meet you as well. Thank you.
That's Ananya Chadha from Toronto. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.